Yeah, fuck it, let's go. Hi, what's up?
Steven.
That's my name. Don't wear it out. Ha 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 ha.
Saying hello. How's it going?
It's going great.
Hey, I was talking to you last night. I was messaging you about like conversations, the Twitch political sphere debates and stuff.
Okay.
You asked to talk. I don't know if there was like a specific direction you wanted to go in.
I was on my phone. I was too lazy to text you, so I thought like the easiest way to get you to shut the fuck up was to say, "Oh, do you want to talk tomorrow?" So that you would stop DMing me. So here we
Fuck
are.
yeah, yeah. This is the best way to, I think, not talk to someone is to talk to them.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching your stream beforehand.
Good choice.
Yeah, the best stream, the only stream you should watch on the
Absolutely.
internet.
Yep.
And you were talking about like status. I mean, I think that's definitely part of like the streaming culture. And I'm very self-conscious about status because on one hand, I want to just like, stream and, post sexy pictures online and make money from that. And I think that like, if I wanted to do that in a way that earned me the most status and sort of material success, I would just like LARP as a socialist or like a vaguely lefty person. And I find that like incapable. I'm not able to like lie in that way. And so I'm very easily drawn into political arguments and debates where I'm not able to take on like the status affirming position, authentically at least.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that like I'd be curious about your thoughts on the political debate sphere and what's the best way to navigate it.
Well, best way is going to be with relation to whatever your goal is. I guess. What is your goal? What do you want to do? What do you want to get out of it?
I just want to make money. That's the goal.
Well, then you should just post pictures and give hot takes on current events, right? That should be the.
That's the solution. That's the way to do it.
I mean, if that's right, I think current events are the big thing, and then funnel money into your whatever you make the most money off of. I'm guessing it's OnlyFans. I don't know how much your stream makes, but
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like one interesting thing was that like talking to you in the few times that I did, I made like ridiculous amounts off of that. Like I think I made like $4,000
good,
in
nice.
excess income.
You're gonna
Like the
cut me
first
in
time
on
that I
some of
talked
that,
to
right?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's only fair.
Okay.
But like,
Why don't you? You should publish that. Look at how not transphobic my audience is. See?
yeah, exactly. Your
Exactly.
audience, they love cooming
True.
to
Exactly.
trans women.
Exactly.
It's incredibly progressive. But at the same time, that made me like suddenly like, oh shit, like I don't want to like ask Destiny to talk about things because that's like me like clout chasing or whatever. And I don't want to like be seen as that. So
Interesting phenomenon with that. I say this every time somebody brings it up. Usually the people that are most worried about being clout chasers are usually the people that you would want clout chasing the most. Like, there are a few people that I've talked to that I don't talk to as much as I would because they're worried about how it comes off, but I don't usually mind. Like, if you clout chase something, that's fine. You seem like a cool person. I don't care. But then other people that I don't like will hardcore clout chase, and I'd rather just not talk to them at all. So
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean like there's there's also this sort of like thing that I'm learning to navigate, which is just generally like the authenticity piece and try not to like suck up to people because it's very easy to like suck up to if I wanted to like suck up to your audience and just like make DGG like me and that would like bring me income.
Yeah.
But I think it's like it's not a sustainable strategy to do that. So I think that I've been trying to like maybe navigate the space in a little bit more of an authentic way.
I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, it's all going to depend on what your goal is. If it really is truly, I mean, you made incompatible statements. You said that like earlier your goal is to just make money, but clearly that's not the only goal, or there must be some other value that supersedes that at least a little bit given your current income. Because you said if you wanted to, you could just like, do a bunch of dumb shit, like be a socialist and LARP as that all day, but you don't. So there must be something else that you value a little bit more than that, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to take on a position convincingly that you don't have over the long term. And I'm like very easily drawn into political debates just because I love arguing with people and fighting with people over things, even though I don't think that that's necessarily a always a good way to exist in life. I mean, one thing that I've really had to work on with just like personal relationships is not debating people, and just trying to be like less of a debate lord in my own personal relationships.
For sure.
And I think that's like one of these examples where you have these competing values, and you sort of have to balance them off of each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue that I have sometimes. Is that it's tempting, especially in relationships, like debating people over their feelings, or accusing somebody of being irrational or something is dumb. Yeah. Have you? How is the? I haven't done like. I was gonna do a night where I was just gonna go through all the numbers and see post ban how the Twitch politics scene is doing. How do you think everybody's doing? Is everything still going okay, or is it kind of falling apart, or what's going on?
I think it's going all right. I had this debate with Vaush the other day, and I don't know. Vaush is like very willing to talk to me and debate with me, which I think is interesting. But I'm not exact. I think I can be like a very conciliatory person, or like my rhetorical strategy is oftentimes to just like talk to someone and get them to the point where they're making concessions to me, with the goal of just having it so their audience ultimately is like, okay, here's this person who is identifying as like moderate right wing, or I would maybe even consider a conservative, and they're making points, and Vaush is sort of agreeing with them and giving ground. And I think that's like a good way to open up sort of doors. But it's hard too, because I think that's not always like the best content. Like I was talking to MrGirl Max, and he was saying something like, I think if I were to have you on a show, you just like, we would agree on too much, and it wouldn't make for very good or interesting content. And I think that's definitely true to an extent, because like the Twitch sphere really selects for like this sort of disagreement,
entertaining disagreement, right?
Right, exactly. So like you can be successful on Twitch as like a sort of a heel for big streamers, like this lol cow.
Although you have to be willing to do it. Everybody likes the idea of that, but it's really hard to do that in the long term, because it will destroy people's like mentals. Like people can't handle that kind of conflict long term, even if they think they can.
Yeah, that's also another thing that I've realized. Like it's a lot of people who look in from the outside sort of have this assumption that like, oh, well, I would be different. Like if I'm talking to them or I'm getting like hate, like I would just ignore it or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to do. That's like definitely a skill that you have to develop over time.
For sure.
Can I run my Vaush debate or like by you and ask?
This is
what
your time on my stream. You can do whatever you want. Okay, go for it.
I'm just gonna commandeer your stream. It's my stream now.
Yep. Oh wait, actually.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself. I'm gonna go put food in the oven. 1 sec.
Okay. Is he gone, DGG? Do you get to break all of the rules now? Say it. Say it, guys. I don't know what to say. Obama. There you go. You're welcome. Yeah, I guess you guys probably don't know too much about me. My name is Taf, or Taftaj, or April. I post cringe on the internet all the time. That's my professional job. It's just posting cringe. Listen, I'm morbing all the time, okay? I have seen Morbius. You know what, Morbius? Far better movie than Everything Everywhere All at Once. I barely even know the name of the second movie, because I've spent too much time morbing. Yeah, I cried watching Morbius. And then I watched Everything Everywhere All at the same time. And my tears turned to the desert. They were sucked back into me. It was so bad. I'm just built different that way. Eating? No. Fucking lame. But yeah, I feel awkward sometimes talking to Steven because like, what the fuck do I say to him? He like asked me to talk, and I was like, sure.
777.
But I sort of want to talk to him about politics and just like debate him and shit. I think that would be fun. The thing is that like talking to Steven, is there a Duke Nukem? Am I talking over 777. Taftaj, notice how he dominated you in status by telling you to talk. Yeah, Steven was just like, all right, I'm gone. I'm just going to force Taftaj, the most interesting person on the internet, to fill stream volume. Because clearly she's the most entertaining person here. Status? How the fuck do you say it? More complicated than saying my name, for sure. I consider myself right-wing. I'm trying to do like a manifesto type thing explaining my political positions because I think that they're difficult for people to understand. A lot of people think that I'm libertarian. And I haven't identified as a libertarian since like, high school. But yeah, I think like the libertarian goal of sort of spontaneous order is something that's desirable, but not something that can be just achieved on its own. You need like very specific conditions to achieve that, and ideally you want to create those conditions politically. So like one thing that I would do, if you go like to the suburbs of a city, you'll notice that there's not a lot of police in the suburbs, and it's not because like you'll also notice that there's like not a lot of crime, and it's not because like less police equals less crime. In fact, the opposite is true, but rather that like the socioeconomic conditions in the suburbs are such that there aren't a lot of incentives to commit crime, and so like that status, that goal, that scenario or environment where you don't need a lot of police is desirable, where you can let up on state influence. That relaxing of state power is desirable, but it's something you have to work to. And so I think that like the libertarian status of, loosening government and allowing people to engage in free association.
Fuck, hold on. I'm so sorry. Stop, you guys are being so rude. Hold on. I didn't pause my donuts when I left, and Duke Nukem he gets a little bit crazy sometimes.
Oh yeah, chat was yelling at me at different times, but I talked over Duke Nukem because that's the status game.
Okay.
We have important things to discuss, like the status of my OnlyFans career.
Yeah, okay.
Did you catch the Vaush debate with What If Altist?
No, I wanted to watch it, but it wasn't linked to me. Wait, what were you talking about? Okay, our brains are reset. Okay.
Yeah, this is gonna lead into it, but like,
okay. I did not. I wanted to, but I haven't seen it. No.
Yeah, it was an absolute dumpster fire. They both just like talked over each other and nothing happened. But like, I don't know if you're familiar with What If Altist as a creator. He creates these kind of like alternate history videos, which if you dislike my history takes, I think you will be infinitely more annoyed by What If Altist's history takes, because he has this tendency to like select one or two historical facts and like extrapolate the fuck out of them.
Okay. Wait,
so
did you really say Everything Everywhere All at Once was a bad movie?
Compared to Morbius, it may as well be a 1 out of 10.
Okay,
Stephen.
good troll. Okay, sorry. So he extrapolates alternative history things,
or just like individual historical facts. And so like this debate got brought up within the discussion between him and Vaush about the ideological origins of the modern social justice movement. And what he was saying is that like modern social justice has much more leftist ideological origins than the civil rights movement. And they sort of just talked over each other and, nothing happened. And I think that What If Altist gave a pretty weak version of this argument. But there's a stronger version of the argument. And that's what I ended up debating Vaush about, as well as like worker productivity and some other things. But I think it's important to draw distinctions between modern social justice and the civil rights movement, because a lot of times they're quite different in their approach to solving societal issues. And I think it does make sense for someone to like be supportive of aspects of the civil rights movement, but not a fan of the modern social justice movement.
Okay. Well, do you want to give that argument to me or what?
Elaborate. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think like the bad way to make this argument is to say that they're completely different. There's no overlap, and like, night and day, you can like one and not like the other one. But the better way to make this argument is to point out that there were radical leftist aspects of the civil rights movement, and there were liberal and perhaps radical liberal aspects of the civil rights movement. And both of these wings of the civil rights movement competed for influence. But the government of the 1960s and the American public opinion of the 1960s was not one of radical leftism. And so the civil rights movement wing that ultimately won out and won the affection of the public and is sort of remembered favorably by people is the wing that is the more liberal one. It's the one that made arguments on the basis of, I am a man, and, all men are created equal, and therefore I ought to have, affirmation of my rights as an equal person, established in law. And so the civil rights movement is really a codification of that liberal principle of equality, despite the fact that there were genuinely very radical leftist movements at the time advocating for civil rights. And so I think that you can point that out. And I think Vaush will point to the radical elements and say, like, yes, there were radical elements. That's true. But I would say that, like, the reason why the civil rights movement was initially successful and the way that a lot of people remember it is because of its successful appeal to like these liberal principles. And then you fast forward in time to now, and modern social justice is a relatively fringe, movement. It doesn't represent all of the left, but it represents maybe 6% of the very progressive people, people who are like Ibram X. Kendi or Kimberly Crenshaw, who make these like very radical arguments for social justice that are rooted in Marxist arguments. And so I think that you can legitimately, as a liberal person, look at those Marxist arguments and say, those aren't so good, and we can disavow those. But I still agree with the founding principle of the civil rights movement.
Okay. I don't know if I necessarily disagree, or I don't think I even have strong feelings on this, or I don't know how relevant I would consider this to any of the arguments that I make, but okay, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't even think it's like that controversial of a take, but I just ended up going in circles over and over with Vaush on like whether or not this was true. And it sort of culminated with Vaush saying that, well, ideas that were once radical are now considered sort of mundane. And so ideas that are like radical now would be like very radical in the past. And that sort of felt like, okay, now he's conceding ground to me, but he's still saying that like he disagrees with me. And the discussion just sort of fizzled with like me not being able to pin him down on any sort of topic or any sort of position.
Sure. I'd have to watch the conversation or watch Lubin, because I mean, it could have been your fault, right? I don't know. I'd have to watch it, right? But
Well, I think it was sort of my fault because
okay.
like I have a hard time sort of engaging rhetorically sometimes. And I do think that I made rhetorical blunders where like I used radical and leftist interchangeably. And this is probably like a bad move on my part because like the liberal arguments were radical at the time. And I should have like specified that when I was saying radical, what I was really trying to express was like leftist or Marxist. So I think we sort of ended up getting in the weeds there where like we were just speaking past each other because I was using a word in one way and he was interpreting it in another way. So yeah, ended up kind of going back and forth in circles.
Gotcha. How often is it pretty easy for you to get into contact with Vaush? Like, will he just talk to you no matter what, or?
I think so. I think Vaush likes talking to me. Yeah, I like messaged him and was like, thanks for talking. And he was like, yeah, I like talking to you. So
Nice. Good job.
yeah, but he doesn't talk to you.
No.
Why is that?
We all have our versions why, but you can ask him that. I think his answer is that I'm a bad faith interlocutor. There's no reason to talk to somebody like me because all I'm going to do is obfuscate with logical fallacies, and I'm never going to approach anything in good faith.
I
What are you
guess,
gonna do, man? When you're bad faith, you just can't help but be bad faith.
I mean, I don't know. I think that's quite a shame that he won't talk with you because I think it's entertaining. And
Yeah, it's super entertaining for all the audiences involved, really. The issue is that just the last few conversations we had, he looked really bad. And I think he's a little bit more obsessed with making like optically salient points rather than things that like are rationally or logically true. And as long as he's on that bridge and I'm on the other one, if I'm being at least a little bit mindful, the conversations are always going to make him look really silly. And I think we ran into 2 or 3 in a row of those where that happened. So I think for him, it's just, there's like nothing to be gained from talking to me. Like the increase in viewership or whatever isn't worth the optical hits of like actually taking an optical loss to Destiny to debate, which is like pretty bad. Nobody wants to be that person.
well, it also seems that he's like really hyped you up as just like incredibly incompetent. And
Yeah, he does that a lot, but
like,
the issue
awful.
is that like those none of those arguments ever logically follow, right? Like imagine if you knew there was an incompetent person with a larger fan base than yours who was willing to debate, like you would do that every time, right?
Unless you thought that they were just like Weasley and
Nah, I'd still
like
no way. If
really
they're
good.
bigger than me, if I thought that Crowder or Shapiro or Jordan Peters, like you'd do those debates 10 out of 10 times, always, because it's just there's like the exposure is huge, the potential to gain a new fan base is huge, the viewership on your on videos will be huge, like the dunk video, like everything's just like it's such a no brainer, right? The only reason you would do it is because you're afraid of the other person, or if they're like legitimately like a far smaller content creator than you or something, because otherwise, why would you avoid it? It's such a great opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. But like from his perspective, it's going to be that arguing with you is like he would basically say the same thing about you that you say about him. He would say that like you are just like Weasley and like optically focused, and
Yeah, but the
you're not
difference
really
is
interested in having a real conversation.
Yeah, but the difference is I don't run from that. That's an opportunity for me. I know that Vaush is dumber and more optically obsessed. So like that's free views for me. I can grab parts of his fan base. I get emails from ex-fans of his. I think I look good in most of those conversations now. Like, yeah, that's the difference. We might say the same things about each other, but at the end of the day, I'm willing to put up and he kind of wants to have the fortress arc. So I think that speaks to the difference in the conviction of our arguments.
Do you think that, I mean, like, what is your perspective on, because he's very willing to talk to me. And I wonder if part of that is like my rhetorical style being like very non-aggressive. But
Yeah, as long as he
why
feels
do you
like he
think that
gets
is?
to kind of like walk away with like his honor and dignity intact and just sort of change his position on anything, I think he'll be willing to talk to most people in that realm like that.
It's
yeah.
like a face saving thing, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you were watching like that status video because it's so connected to all of this. A lot of times, like negotiating with people or interacting with them is just this face-saving game where you're trying to allow them to preserve their dignity. And if you destroy them, they're not going to be willing to have continued conversations with you.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What's your take on like, I don't know, what's the current drama with Max and Brittany? Because I feel like I haven't followed that. Totally.
I'll reiterate it again for the 7 millionth time, even though I don't know if my fan base understands this or agrees or anything, but I like interesting people. I think that the new cast of characters I have on my stream are incredibly interesting. I think Max is very interesting. People hated Brittany for a long time because she sounds a little woo-woo. Now people are hating Max a bit because he sounds a little abusive. And there's just, there's a lot of crazy wild stuff going on. Max just did a video recently and I think my community is kind of against him on that, and then we're just kind of bouncing around on figure out who we hate more in my community. But
Sounds like good drama. I don't know. I found Max sort of annoying at first, and then I think he grew on me quite a bit. I do think that there's like a lot of value in people who are willing to take tough positions. Like you asked me one time when you were still doing like a trans section of your manifesto. I don't know if that's going to eventually make it to the final
it
cut.
is. But go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you asked me about autogynephilia, AGP.
Oh yeah,
and-
careful.
Yeah. Well, I think that like how Max sometimes talks about his experiences with abuse or with pedophilia or with like, just his sexual interactions. It reminds me a lot of what I've tried to do talking about autogynephilia and being like very open about my experiences with AGP in a way that is enormously taboo in the
That
trans
is
community.
true. Hold that thought for 1 second. My oven just beeped. 1 second.
Wow. Going to get food once again. Disgusting. Yeah, AGP. I'll talk about that with Stephen. I already said Obama, but I'll say it again. Obama. Obama. Okay, AGP for like the audience. It's autogynephilia, which is self-arousal when you view yourself as a woman. And so it sort of implies that there's like a sexual component to being trans and to transitioning, which I think is true, at least for me. And I think it's something that's like, it's very stigmatized and very poorly understood. And so one thing that I try to do when I talk to people is just like own that sort of hard characterization, and then try to force people to actually engage with what that experience is like and whether or not that experience is something that's morally wrong or should actually affect how people see me. I don't think that cis women can have AGP in like the traditional Blanchard sense of the term, but cis women can experience like the same feeling of like self-arousal.
What are they feeling? I get self-aroused all the time. What are you talking about?
Bro, based. Hell yeah. Welcome to the AGP gang.
I feel like AGP is a really difficult feeling to wrestle with because I don't know where the AGP, how you feel you might have AGP versus you're just like a normal like human being. Like to some extent, I've talked to a lot of girls that are like, I really like having sex with mirrors so that I can like see myself and shit. Like that's like a normal cis woman, normal probably a lot of person experience. But I can imagine, especially depending on the trans communities you've been in, that's got to be like some huge fucking fear if you're like a newer Zoomer trans kid, like, oh God, I can never be aroused by my own body. Otherwise I'm one of those AGP fucking freaks and I'm like not even a real trans. Like that's got to be like a really mindfucky scenario to be in, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And like throw in the additional factor, which is you're part of this marginalized group and you're trying to advocate for like your gender's legitimacy. Mm-hmm. And if there's any sort of width that your gender identity might be the result of just like sexual impulse or fetish, that's something that a lot of people feel like delegitimizes their sort of claim to gender identity.
Yeah.
So that makes it much harder as well.
Which is difficult though, because I mean like being sexual and everything is kind of like it's a pretty big fucking part of our gender and our expression and everything, right? Like sex and all of that is a pretty big part of what we do. So it's kind of weird that you are almost like forced to disassociate that from your identity in order to not be offensive or in order to validate your own gender identity or something. You know, it's kind of weird, but.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because a lot of people experience like something similar to it. Mm-hmm. I had like a talk with a bunch of cis women, and afterwards, for some reason in the group chat, AGP got discussed. And a lot of the cis women were saying things that like they experienced, you know, experiences that would be labeled as AGP if they were cis women, mm-hmm. you know, to greater extents than even I would say that I experienced.
If they were, wait, you mean if they were trans women?
If they were trans women. Yeah, and that's like an important thing to understand too, is like autogynephilia is unique in that it's not like arousal at just like your current body state, but it's arousal at like imagining it as a way that's like different than it would naturally be. So like for a trans woman to like be aroused by the idea of being a woman, it'd be like more comparable to like a cis woman being aroused by the idea of being a man. And that would actually be like quite unusual. And so it's not unusual necessarily.
Yeah, it would, but like it's like 12 times more complicated because like am I a real trans person or because if a trans woman thought of her body in a sexual way as a woman, is she thinking of herself as a different sex or as the sexes in her brain, right? How do you if you don't even know you're trans, because especially puberty, like people might be questioning, like that's got to be a really difficult thing to sort through, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's a good point. Because if like the brains of trans women truly are such that they are just like identical in some like biological way with cis women, or similar enough that you'd have like the same mechanism occurring where you might have self-arousal, mm-hmm. But that self-arousal is like targeted towards an internal gender identity as opposed to an external sex. It would make sense for them to have experiences of AGP, mm-hmm. and it would in fact be like totally in line with the rest of the population. But see, like having this conversation with you, we've already drilled down deeper and more meaningfully on the topic then like you can usually, because people are just too afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, like try having a discussion with Demon Mama about autogenital.
Nope, that's a one-way ticket to Transville. Yeah. Wait, have you talked? Did you mention? I don't know, because I didn't listen because I walked away. Did you tell everybody like the history of AGP and like why it's so theoretically problematic to talk about it? Or
I was talking about it a little bit. I gave like a very brief definition, which is that it's like self-arousal, the idea of imagining yourself as a woman. It was developed by a sex researcher named Ray Blanchard, and he basically had this typology of like, he argued that people who transition, they do it for gender dysphoria reasons, but there's also a sexual component, and that can include AGP. And a lot of his studies were like not conducted in the best way. A lot of the evidence wasn't like super strong. And so when people critique AGP, a lot of times what they critique is like the strength of those studies. And they'll be like, well, they're not very strong, so like we can just dismiss all of it. And it's convenient to dismiss all of it because it's like it's a very hard topic to talk about, but I think it's true to the experience of a lot of trans women.
Yeah, but then I've seen people tell me that the way that I see it expressed the most in kind of like the trans communities that are very much against that idea is that it basically takes transness and like reduces it to a very like fetishy kind of sexual kink kind of thing basically, and that was the issue that people had with the Blanchard guy, because my understanding is that and I might be misunderstanding this, doesn't he basically say that like trans women come from either like, was it like gay men in denial or something, or the autogynephilia thing? I think these were like the two types of trans women that he identifies. So people who are trans feel like this guy is basically reducing our trans experience to like these weird sexual kinks.
Yeah, exactly. The other typology, the other group is homosexual transsexual. And he argues that like there's some set of like very feminine gay men, and Ray Blanchard, he's a gay man. He argues that there's some set of very feminine gay men who have a lot of pressure around them environmentally to transition and just live as like women so they can date men. And so like historically speaking, like there's some instances where like this might make sense. So like, you know, people talk about like Iran and like forced gender transitions because of like their unique historical circumstance where like the Shah of Iran like interacted with a trans person and became like, you know, preferred people transitioning to being gay. And that's like a very unique historical circumstance. But you see like echoes of that elsewhere where, you know, someone might be trans or it might be homosexual, but it's easier just because they're already so feminine to transition and then pass as like a woman and date men that way. I don't know. I think that like of the typology, I believe in AGP more than HSTS. I think HSTS sounds like a very unique set of circumstances.
Yeah, it's not going to be like just because there's like so much going on with being trans, the idea that somebody would go through all of the effort to transition and do all of this just to have like weird trans gay sex it seems a little bit extraordinary, I would say.
It's a little far-fetched, right?
Yeah. Or it's a lot of effort, right?
I think so, but that's also the criticism of AGP is that like, you know, being trans requires so much effort and so much suffering that if it was just for something that like, you know, you could masturbate and then like feel like alleviation from, you probably wouldn't do it. Sure. And so I think that like Ray Blanchard, he's acknowledged that like trans women, even if they are at AGP, do have gender dysphoria. And he thinks that like transition is still the right move, medically speaking, for trans women to do, even if they're AGP. And so like, funnily, he'll get invited to like TERF discussions and then he'll end up arguing with them because they're like, yeah, these AGPs, they're crazy, right? And he's like, yeah, they're crazy. And they're like, that's why trans women shouldn't exist. And he's like, well, actually, like HRT is probably good for them. And it's like, you know, our best known solution to gender dysphoria.
Okay, well, anything else?
No, that's all. We've exhausted every conversation, I think.
Every single topic. What do you, how's the political streaming and everything going then?
I think it's fun. I haven't done it enough. I sort of want to do it more, but I think it's harder when like you don't have a lot of like viewers or people, because like I'm very interested in having conversations with people, but it's sort of boring, I think, to just like talk to my own stream.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. If you don't have like a lot of viewers or a diversity of thought in the audience, it's just kind of you arguing with one chatter or something over and over again, right?
Right, exactly. Sometimes I have the impulse to just like, I don't know, like at random people who I see like mentioning me, being like, oh, Taftaj is a dumb fuck. And they have like some terrible interpretation of my opinion. And I'm like, you need to argue with me. But
Do you ever pick fights with people on Twitter? That's how I get a lot of my content.
maybe I should. I think that what I want to do with Twitter is like make it a little bit less NSFW. And
Oh
then,
yeah, shit. You should just make another Twitter account for that. People get super ass mad when there's like not safe for work shit on their Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like what I'll probably transition to is just having like sort of sexy like lingerie pictures on Twitter, but nothing that shows like genitalia. That would be my goal.
Could you not just make like another like Taftaj politics Twitter or something, or?
I could, but like ultimately, like the goal is like funnel people to OnlyFans.
Well, then you link off to your other account with it, right? Like, this is my not safe for work account.
It's an option. I could definitely try it. Yeah. I think the other thing is that like sometimes people have the interest in like debating me or having discussions with me just because the idea that someone with like a relatively large NSFW Twitter following would even like engage in these topics at all is sort of novel and interesting.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
I think that's probably how I got you. I was like, Steven, I've got this big Twitter. You should debate me.
No, I'm just a chaser. That's the only reason I responded to
Oh,
you.
okay. That's the reason. It explains your transphobia because you only see us as objects.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like grossed out by my own desires and stuff. So I'm like, ugh.
Yeah,
like I figure if I
exactly.
hate you guys enough, it'll like. And
You
when I say
desperately
guys
wanna
there,
fuck
I meant guys
heifers.
in the actual misgendering way, not guys in the gender neutral way. Yeah, if I misgender all of you guys, it makes me feel better about my own desires and everything. So
Yeah. Keffels ratios you and you come instantly.
basically, yeah. What she doesn't realize that she's actually ratioed me across like 13 different accounts. I make a new account and I get ratioed by her constantly. She doesn't even know what she's doing for me, but
In fact, she's only ratioing you.
maybe, possibly, you know,
It was just all Steven the entire time.
basically, yeah.
Yeah, that seems possible. Okay.
All right. Well, hey, have
I'll
fun. Be
let you-
careful. If there's anything that comes up, you can always shoot me a DM and we can chat about it. Okay.
Yeah, hopefully I'll watch your stuff and find something to yell at you about.
Gotcha. Sounds good.
Yeah. Bye, Steven.
Have fun. Bye.